Doug Proper, Dan Earlywine. Let her rip, fellas.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to, this is the 12th episode of the Dan and Doug Show, which means we've been doing this for about a year now, which I think is awesome. Today we're going to continue talking about what we were talking about last month because we kind of ran out of time to do the live demo stuff. So we're going to do some live evaluations of guitars and talk about how we build our estimates, how we build our bids for the work that we're doing, and how each one of us do it in our different ways, so we're not leaving any kind of money on the table and we're not missing things that we shouldn't. A couple of things just to review, and this we went over in detail last time, so you can check last month's episode. But some of the materials that we showed off last time, which are things like, if I have it here, the different sheets of diagrams for guitars for doing, this kind of work. Those are available now on the website. Also, we talked about having an intake form that you can use for doing the intake. I'm going to be during my part, I'm going to be walking through that, as well as the ubiquitous rate sheet, which I referred to last time as well. All of those materials, if I'm not mistaken, are posted on the website, I think in the same post as the episode itself from last month. So all of that stuff is available for download for you to, change and use in your own shops, in your own fashions, but I figured they would be up there as a good reference point. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge both Ian and Jerry Hayes for the work they're doing on the website, which is absolutely incredible. They built this thing from the ground up, and it is coming together as a wonderfully functional, very entertaining website to use, with lots of features to it that just keeps getting better week after week after week. So bravo on that. It's an awesome website that's coming together for the Luth Group and proving to be very, very useful.
Bravo.
So I did want to mention that. So anyway, Dan, we were talking about evaluating guitars last time, and you walked through many of your ways of doing things and what was important to you. So I want to start with you and take a look at a guitar that come into your shop and have you walk us through the process of what you do to build a bid, how you make sure you're not missing anything, and how you deal with that aspect of it. And this, I believe, is a guitar you said you're currently working on, so you're also going to show us some of the work that's being done.
Yep.
Go for it.
The guitar I'm working on is a 1967 Gretsch Viking, and I'm just going to read a little bit this because it's easy. The guy that owns it, his name is Pat. He bought it new in 1968 for $250 at Music Land in Lindenhurst, New York, Long Island.
Wait. He bought this at Lindenhurst, at Music Land in Lindenhurst?
Yep.
That's where I did my apprenticeship.
Really?
Yeah, I went to high school in Lindenhurst. And
small world.
Getting into guitar and getting into working on guitars in high school, and I apprenticed at that music store for a little more than a summer. Just before I started, I think it was in my junior year, and I started taking on jobs on my own in my senior year, and then I put myself through college doing repairs, and I apprenticed with the guy in the back room of that music store.
That's awesome.
So I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's good. I think that's wonderful. This guy is obviously in his early 70s. And at some point he's had work that he's played it for years. It's the shit's played out of it. I'll show you a picture of him in it later. And he's had it fixed from what I think. Well, there's no sense saying all that. We're gonna go through and look at it. So we were glad to have it because I've never had my hands on a Gretsch Viking. I've seen pictures of them, maybe seen one at a vintage guitar show, but they're weird. And he had some work done to it that sort of worked, and some that worked pretty good but not great. And now he's not happy with it, and he sent it to me, and I'm gonna go show you.
Awesome.
Now, do I turn off this TV here?
No, you can leave it on. Which one are we going to? Are we going mobile?
I'm gonna.
The Blake Burkholder's going. There we go. Hey Dan, flip that guitar over again on its back, on its face. Did that have like a Gretsch Country Gentleman style cover on the back of it?
This, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, it did have. He didn't send that.
Okay.
He didn't send the pickups either. He's going to wire it back up. Actually, he didn't even send the tailpiece. He forgot. And he wanted new tuners on it, and he didn't send them because his others were pretty much ruined. But I did all the work I had to do before that anyway until I got to needing the tailpiece so I could string it up to fret it. The binding was rotted and falling off. Somebody rebound this, and they did a pretty good job. They just quit. I think they got the whole thing bound, and I'd be happy with that. I'd continue scraping, and there's a lot of finish chips all the way around it. But when it got to the back, I think it didn't have, they didn't have a long enough piece to finish. So when it got up here, they took and put a longer white stripe going up here.
Huh.
And colored in with some crayon or some black marker to make it look like binding. And it's really horrible. I also, he didn't care if I put a heel cap on it. He just wants to play it. So my job was to rebind it on the fingerboard and fret it. Make a new nut spacer. It's a little bit wider than what it had. Fit the bridge. The bridge had such poor shaped feet that it did not sit. So I took that into note. I looked at all the finished stuff, and then I talked to the man about what are we going to do? He just wants to play it, doesn't care how it looks. He's going to wire it back up. So there. So the first thing that I did was make some binding. I glued up some binding that's the same color and width of the stuff used back then. Took out the frets. The old binding just almost fell off. You touch it with a knife and it fell off in chunks. You've seen it. Why the person that bound the body didn't do that, I don't get it. Maybe he took it back because he was sick of waiting. I don't know. The peghead binding's fine. We decided at that point to take it over to the desk and write up a little estimate. I need to fret it, make binding and put it on, set it up to play with the bridge and this crazy saddle piece that hangs down through the top that you're going to see. And that seemed like a pretty decent, easy job to do. Not having to mess with any finished stuff. Then by the time I was really done, I sent in some pictures and we both look at that and I go, man, I don't see why you wouldn't at least want to get rid of this. And then someday maybe you're gonna have some finisher touch this up. So he thought about it, and we're gonna pull out these side pieces. Put new ones in, and I'm gonna make some short binding again. I wish I don't have any left of what I just used and made. I'm gonna patch that in the best I can and make a new heel cap. And this is raised up here with, underneath that is the screw.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna bore that out, see what's in there, and put a nice level plug in there so it looks good. And I will probably do, I will do a little airbrushing around here. And I'm gonna go down and touch up a lot of the chips. We don't care if it looks perfect, but so that they just don't get rotten wood. Then I'm gonna put a little French polish or lacquer along the edges, touch it up decently. So with all that in my head, I go over to my computer and I'm gonna show you some photos and I'm gonna type it up just like I would. In fact, I already have one typed up, but it may not be accurate anymore because we are now doing a different thing. He wants to go ahead and put more money into it. I won't take on the whole body and spread. I don't want to, and he knows that.
So, Bert, how often when you're doing like a job on a guitar like this, where it comes in for what seemingly is just fretwork and a little bit of, the binding work on the neck, and then some, some maintenance and setup work and stuff like that, do you find yourself coming back to the customer or the customer, and you discussing the guitar along the way, saying, hey, how about we do this, or how about we do that, or, how about we add, how often does the job work its way up from your original estimate due to conversations that are taking place while the job is taking place? You're muted again. You're muted at your computer.
I would say that's hard to estimate, but probably 20 or 30% of the time, because for the weird jobs that I take on,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a walk-in repair store that will do anything and can do anything. Wouldn't work here. So I end up having quite a rapport with most of these customers, back and forth, either on the phone. I like to do it on email and text, and I'll send a lot of them and communicate a lot with them. We become friends and they trust me. And if I say, you really ought to do this, and if they can afford it, they do it.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Now if I share this screen, you'll see what's on my screen, right?
I think so.
I can just show some of the photos of it. So now I'm going to share my screen. And you all can see that, right?
Yeah, I see pictures.
That's the guy that owns it. That's probably about 12 years ago. So like that. There's a good close look at that. It's it'll never be perfect, but it can certainly be a lot better than that. You see why, right?
Sure. You can
that's
flip. You can
That's some of the new work. That's how the binding came off. And when you just touch it with a knife, plop, plop, plop. So it's a pretty clean channel. There's chips in the board.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I made the binding on that StewMac binding jig.
Mm-hmm.
I keep a little bowl of acetone here.
So you added some bolts to the binding jig at the end there to tighten that piece down. Oh, you bolted that to a platform which you can hold your acetone in.
I can bring it over and show it.
Yeah, let's see that thing.
Do you want to do it now or after we look at more?
I will do it. We'll do it after.
I don't care.
We'll do it after. Keep going.
And I had the guitar in Doug Proper the Total Vice Doug Proper workstation,
Mm-hmm.
which is starting to become my neck jig. I may never need the StewMac neck jig again. Not sure. I wouldn't throw it out. But I can do different things on either one. Having all the tilt functions in this is really cool to make it free to bind a guitar, that's for sure. For side dots, I used to have a red rod of plastic that I don't have anymore, or it might even have been hard artist pencil lead. And I didn't put any dots in it before I put the binding on, because I forgot, and I've forgotten before. That's just a little marker to hang over the edge, so I get them about the same depth down all the way along.
What are you using for your template on that?
For the template of,
Yeah, you're using something to mark where you're using something as a template to mark where the.
it's just a bent piece of shim stock,
Okay.
7,000 shim stock with the hole drilled in it, just bent over the edge, and I can just guide it along. But then it's hard to drill the holes up where the cutaway is.
Yeah.
Can't get a drill in there, so that is a little trickier. And the tool for that I used is this long holder will hold a hex shaft. So that little drill, this little arbor, this little chuck is tiny, fits in that, and I can reach down there. And that driver is kind of like when you mount an air hose on a compressor and you pull the spring ring down to get it in.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that does. You pull down and it clicks in there. I don't even know where I got that, but it's cool. This is just a process of putting the binding on. For this one, I used a red pencil, which I've done before. Got the super glue in the hole, accelerate the lead pencil, and then cut it off. This is all this bare stuff is chips, not even from when I took the binding off, just over the years, because look how dirty it is. You know, lacquer falling off all along the joint. Now this needs to get cleaned and touched up a bit. Probably drop fills.
Hey, Dan, quick question about that. When you use the pencil trick to make that dot, do you have to put CA over the top of it after?
Well, I'll be putting lacquer over it.
Oh, okay.
Or CA would be fine. You know, one of those kind of doesn't have enough color to it because this was a soft pencil. And I just put some red CA powder into some Glue Boost. I filled a couple of them with Glue Boost. The blue label, medium viscosity, and their red powder. And it worked great. This is my apprentice Seal's younger sister, Addie. If anyone knows Seal, that's now off at Brian Gallup's school, shining like a star, I think. This is her sister in 10th grade, and she's good with their close-up handwork and loves to come over and do little things like this, like bevel the fret ends. She can really focus. She's just about to turn 16.
You get the whole family getting into this.
Oh, it's easy. That's Blake with the ebony bridge base. Bringing it in so it fits the top. He's got a piece of clear plastic double stick going across the top with lines on it so he knows where the bridge is. I forgot I can do that. It's just another shot of the binding getting its first late. That's a little video. I don't know if that you can see that. Does anybody want to see that?
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing it now. It's moving.
Those bolts are bolted into the bottom plate. I've changed the other end of it too. Yeah, I should show that. This piece here is an L shaped and it holds the binding down.
Mm-hmm.
It's pressing it so it doesn't pop up and get irregular. And the other side of this block is also an L shape down in here. It doesn't look like that in the photo. It's a skinnier one. So that's just holding down plastic as it's being drawn through. And that's Elise. Enough of that, okay?
All right.
This is how we make that binding with the Don McCrosty binding trimmer.
Yeah.
And there's a 3-inch hole in the other end and that vacuum on it. You don't get any of the shavings out anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. I love that whole idea of using a downdraft box for that thing. It makes it so clean. But I gotta ask before you go any further. Do you actually have your binding box mounted to the Total Vice pedestal, or is that just sitting on top of it?
It has a really heavy, I don't know what you'd call it, a plumber's or giant metal anvil vise. Huge thing that I never keep in the shop. It probably weighs 70 pounds. We just set that in there and it's just the Total Vice with the plate there.
Oh, okay.
It's just a real heavy box. It doesn't get used enough to go too far with making it.
Okay. I thought you were getting kind of silly there.
You can pick this thing up by the wood and it'll pull the thing with it. It's that much of a vacuum.
Yeah, I know. I made one. It was the smartest thing I ever did. Was following your advice to make one of those downdraft boxes for the McCrosty thing.
I like having a helper. I like having someone to pull it through once we start going. Oh yeah. They won't? Oh. Stop it, right? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Whoops. I dropped out on volume there, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
And there's another shot of that thing. I have a handle down here that's drilled into the end and it's spring loaded, so I can increase or decrease the pressure on the binding.
Hmm.
And these little pegs let me separate layers of binding and hold them open as I pull it into the little fixture. This is all I need to make binding. I can do it by myself real easily. It doesn't get too messy. It's the StewMac thing with a little work put into it. Binding it up. That's a video, but there's no sense playing a video. think it gets confusing. Here's the bridge on this guitar.
Good
It's a normal Gibson roller, Gretsch roller bridge on an ebony bass down here. And the strings go over the rollers and under this roller and up onto the harmony bar. This is they call this thing is called the floating sound unit.
Oh my goodness.
It's an A4 40 hertz tuning fork that hangs from the strings through a hole in the top and into the body. It also is the saddle right here. It's the contact point for the strings, because this bridge is way further back than it's normally would be on a regular Gretsch. These little pins mark the area where the bridge would go if you didn't use this. See them?
Oh. Yeah, my goodness.
And they're on a slant, so the bridge is, I think this one's measured a little bit different than this one. I don't know if that was on purpose, and I think it was. They slanted the bridge a little bit. And it works. We can't listen to it because we don't have the pickups. But even, there's no doubt that even when, just as an acoustic guitar, this thing does some weird stuff.
Like overtones and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
where is the tuning fork part of it? I don't.
You'll see it coming up. Right there.
Oh my God.
It's like welded to the unit. It's part of that bridge unit. It's a
I
real
would love
good-
to know who woke up. I would love to know who woke up in the middle of the night and said, "We got to do this."
It could have been me. It's pretty far out. And you don't see a lot of them. More fitting the top. This is all work. When it got really close and was almost fit, but had just a few thousandths. Like just use a little black super glue just to fill that last. Otherwise, we didn't want to take any more wood off of it.
Sure.
And this was sitting on 2 pieces of felt, one on each end, green felt. And that didn't add to its fitting well to the top. This bridge never could have sat over the bridge markers that gets put in it. You'd have to pull them out or drill holes in the base.
Hmm.
And this is going to get cut here. Well, not that one. This is original. I
Right.
think I'm going to leave that. I think it's just real dirty and funky. I think that can sand and clean up. So that's the job on this guitar. And now I'm going to go and show how I would do it on the computer, how I'd write it up and estimate it. Is that okay?
Sure.
100%.
Am I taking too long?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Okay, here's a letter. I have rebound the neck, refretted it, made a new nut, installed the tuners and tailpiece, and strung it up to see it would play well. I can't do a full setup because this guitar, the string action is controlled by the tuning fork bridge, and the actual bridge sits farther back than a normal guitar and acts as a string guide and rollers for the tremolo use. So to set this up, he may change it. It's I can't guarantee it's going to play perfectly in tune because it's got to hang within a certain part of the hole.
Right.
You can't go forward or back, or then the tuning fork gets muted.
Plus the saddle part of that tuning fork gizmo is just a straight line. So you're at the behest of that part.
Right. Now, let's see. This isn't an actual estimate because there were two sides to the fretboard.
Okay.
Refret 750. The bone nut, it's not really a bone nut, it's a spacer. 175.
Okay.
New heel cap, 145. Cleanup finish around binding neck heel, 250. And in my mind, I'm looking at the new heel cap. How long does that really take to make?
Right.
And I'd say no more than 3 hours. Maybe 2 hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a general like hourly shop number in your head that you shoot
I
for?
never do. I like to think I'm always making $50 an hour, and if it's more, 70 or 60 or 80, that makes me happier. Sometimes I'll make $100 an hour and more.
Mm-hmm.
Install all the parts and set up. $250. That just means what we're gonna do is continue setting this up till it plays well. That's set up.
Okay.
Spray touch-up on an incomplete binding job. Leave it as is to touch a color and blend into the finish would be 600, but I won't do it. I did do it. $100, not perfect. Shit.
Oh, this is the body part of the binding work that was done before it got to your shop, right?
Now I'm looking for the actual. I may have two of these. There's another one. Make and install new, this will be in the one I just showed you is kind of a new thing if he wants to do some of this other wood, but the original one was make and install new binding, fret 750, replace 0 fret spacer 135, install tuners and tailpiece plug script holes. Each the tuners had stripped holes and the little toothpicks in each one. String and adjust 35. Then parts, binding material $15, fret wire 12, bone 7, strings 14. So I figured for $1,333, I probably made money on that. Or at least if I didn't make money, and this is something that doesn't apply to everybody here, I have jobs that my shop crew is learning on, and they can make some money as an apprentice and get a chance to work on all this cool stuff that is a killer training ground. But you don't all have that option. So that's one reason I would price the way I am.
So we're looking at two different emails concerning the same guitar, and I noticed that the numbers are different on these two emails. Which one is the one that wound up being the end result? The one we're looking at?
The one here would be the end result. This one was it only pertains to the new heel. I was typing this up to myself, I guess.
Okay.
And then talking to him on the phone. I would put a heel cap on it for $145.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because that when I totaled up everything on that email, you're looking at a repair that's coming in at about $1,900, just under $2,000.
Yes, because it's extended up to 500 here.
Yeah.
And 645 there. So
Yep.
it might be a little over $2,000. But we talked about it, and originally he didn't want to put the money into it. And then he started thinking about it and reminiscing. And he said, let's do it.
Okay. That's great.
So that's a typical example of how I might take in a guitar. And if I were to take all these figures off this, it could be different. Sometimes I would do this. I might estimate it high, and I might think 5 hours. Fretting, 750 is pretty high to fret that guitar, to be honest.
I think that's fair. I think it's a good price for a refred. Yeah.
I would figure replace the 0 fret spacer. That's like making a nut, but it's not a nut. It's pretty easy to make, as we all know.
Yeah, you
But
just got
make it look good.
then
I'm
you
gonna
gotta,
give that 3 hours. Install tuners. Now, I wouldn't have known at first estimate that the holes were stripped. They'd already been off the old tuners, which weren't working, and he never sent the new tuners to go on it. And I probably would have thought install tuners and tailpiece 0.5, half an hour. And that would have been wrong on that one. It would have been more like a good 1 hour. But in my case, which is great for my shop, Addie did this. And I paid her $15 an hour. So Addie
So-
made $15 and had a wonderful time. And went on to another job. And I get the job done. So that's why my shop's a training school, really.
so in this way, you're able to price out different parts of the job very specifically, and then when you have somebody else completing that particular portion or piece of the ticket, you can
Yes.
judge how much you want to pay them for it.
Oh, I'll pay them by the hour.
Yeah.
And I'm paying Blake $20 an hour now, which isn't, he's worth way more than that.
Right.
I wouldn't pay anybody less than 15 to do my crap around here. So and I have Elise can make a nut. So Elise made a nut for a lovely little 3/4 size Gibson LG1 this week, earlier in the week. And I can't make any better. But I did spend at least an hour with her showing her new ways to do it.
Okay.
So I can charge less than some people or make money even if I don't do all of the work. That's why I encourage people that whenever possible, take on someone you trust as a helper. Don't pay them anything. Find young people that love guitars and will work for nothing. And then you start paying them.
Hey, Dan, when you're working on something that you haven't worked on before, something unusual like this guitar, do you like to build a buffer in for yourself for unknowns?
Well, I told this guy originally that it would be about $1,500, and I realized I could, and I gave it to him for less, but set him up for $600 due to the remaining work. And I have a number of people here. There's Addie that's 15. She only works about 3 or 4 hours a week. And Ava, Brock Poland's daughter, is working here part-time. She's in college. So that's, excuse me, that is swallowed some. that gets a lot of work done very cheap. Cleaning, packing boxes. Then the actual people in my shop that can do all the work are Blake and TK. But I only get I get Blake, if I'm lucky, 2 to 3 days a week. And that's a blessing. TK can come 3 days a week and work about 3 hours. Maybe 4, because he has a bad hip.
Right.
He's old like me. There's only so many hours he can put in. And that's how, and I pay everybody. Now TK, he doesn't want to get paid by the hour because he's really slow and he wants to be slow. But he's a skilled machinist. And he repaired guitars for years ago. And you give TK a job and he can do it without being told much. But it's going to take him hours because he's so particular and worried about it. Anybody have any questions?
I think that whole setup works very nicely. So you have like an email that you don't send to the customer in the version of the first version. The smaller version is kind of like your scratch pad for being able to, punch in different numbers and massage your estimate before you send the final email to the customer, and then you work your way from there back and forth as you continue
Yes.
to communicate with the customer as the job is going on. If the job winds up expanding because they want to add more work that they previously didn't want to do, or if you decide to take on more of it, you can adjust it that way, and you have this trail of an estimate that as long as you keep sending the same email back and forth to the customer, you have a history of what you both agreed to built into the email chain as you continue.
I do, always, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Then everything goes to Joan. Like I sent this bill to Joan. And she will send me back. I'm looking for. I should have one. She sent me can't find it. She sends me an official good looking invoice with the Dannerly one, the logo on it and all that stuff. Sales
And
stuff.
what is she using for the accounting for that? Does she use a particular program for that?
She is in QuickBooks.
Okay.
And has been for years, and has trouble with it sometimes because they always make changes, but she really loves it. It's expensive.
If she ever has any questions about QuickBooks, tell her to call me. I've been using it since like 1986.
Yeah, I'll tell her. But she gets on the phone with the people at QuickBooks and they talk for an hour to work some things out.
She'll spend less time on the phone with me.
I'd love it. So really, I just I look at everything in a guitar that I'm going to do, and then sit at my computer and list it out and think, how many hours will it take? And since I've joined the Luth group in the last few years, I'm definitely raising my prices, and I think
I see that, and I like that.
I think longer about it, and depends where it see, a lot of my work doesn't just walk in. This guy is in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got to be by email. And I like the guy. I probably spend too much time emailing back and forth, but I'm always offering them another option.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, if it was like let's say I had a Les Paul for a refret. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this and let you have it.
Oh, you opening up a new, like a new email?
Yeah,
Can you make that larger so we can easily see it? Or just make the screen size larger if you can.
like this. Is
Yeah, there you go.
that big enough?
Yeah.
I would, a lot of times people say they don't want their fretboard sanded or anything done to it. There would be a note to myself. Check electronics. Let's say it needs fit new bridge. String and set up. These are just, I'm not even going in order. Clean. A lot of people, if you ask them, they want it clean. I don't like to handle real dirty guitars. Who does? So I'll say, you let me clean it, you know, $60 maybe. I would probably put frets, I would probably put on a fret job, $650. This is thanks to the loose group. I'm not, I am now trying to charge 160. I want to charge more. Check a lot of, you can't really guess how much it costs to check electronical stuff because you have to do it. So I'm just guessing that it's a working thing and it works. Fit new bridge. That's something I don't really like to do. I'm gonna say $95. String and set up. I'm gonna say 85. Let's say they said go ahead and clean it a bit. It'll be $45. And there, then I'd have parts, refret, not check electronics, 45. What does that come up to now? Got my little calculator. You probably added it up already.
You want me to run the numbers for you, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to race you.
So let's see what you got here.
I got 903. But I'm often wrong. And that Joan always corrects if I am.
I got 1080. You can't have 903. There isn't a 3 in there.
That's what I'm saying, Joan checks.
Okay.
She does.
1080 sounds about right.
That sounds about right. And then this goes to Joan with the date. In theory, we get in trouble if we don't, but Joan likes to have when the guitar comes in, the name, the email, the phone number, just to start a file on that person.
Okay.
She'll never see this work until it's done or almost to be done. Then I'll send this to her and she'll send me back an invoice. I want to find one just so you can know how good she is. Mhm. You'd think I could just find it.
What if you type in the word invoice?
I can find one. No. If you bring up that guy,
What if you type the word invoice in there? Would it find an invoice for you?
I don't think it can.
Try that invoice 97138.
79138.
Yeah.
What will that do?
Is it? Oh no, it's autofilled down there. Yeah, any of those. David Marcus. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, scroll down. Yeah, I think you can see it there. Perfect.
Then she takes care of that part.
This is
Okay.
quick. This is QuickBooks doing this, Dan, is spitting out this invoice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
And that particular one was a 0028 1925. It just had the typical split through the bridge pins, and it was easy to fill out. I didn't have to take it off. I filled it with ebony dust and super glue and let it sit, and scraped and polished. So there's an example of making good money doing something.
Sure.
But you're also handling a priceless guitar. And do you have any questions? That's what I do.
How'd
That's
you get so cool? That's what I want to know. Anybody? Any questions for Dan? Do I have to start calling on people to make sure you're paying attention?
I think that was a pretty thorough demonstration of how
Okay.
things in Dan shop. I think that's pretty good.
That's it.
I'm scanning through the people attending to see if I can catch anybody looking confused.
I'll ask a question, Steve.
Oh, Steve
Yeah.
King,
Yep.
the distinguished
Dan, how-
gentleman from the great country of Scotland.
The great
Any
place
questions,
where we
sir?
wear skirts. Dan, how, if at all, has it changed the way that you take guitars in and estimate over the years?
Has it changed the way I do?
Yeah, have you changed the way, maybe different pressures on your shop? You're saying now you're winding down, you've got much more help in the shop. Is there any way that you do it differently now as to how you would have done it, say, 30 years ago?
I can do it. You mean how the workflow in the shop?
Yeah, just the intake process and the estimating process.
It's much better having people in the shop.
Does Blake bid anything? Do you have, or are you the primary bidder?
I'm the primary one.
Okay. How's he do, Blake? You ever working on something and you're like, Dan?
Sometimes we find things we missed.
Yeah,
It's usually on the inside of an acoustic someplace hiding,
yeah,
but that happens.
it does happen.
Acoustics are different than electrics for me. There's way more that can go wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've got an acoustic here that we're going to go over.
Way more surprises.
Shall we jump to that?
Yeah,
Sure.
let's do it.
Okay. So we gotta jump to me pinned, and I also need the Doug Turnett pinned as well. Thank you, Dan. That was great.
Very
Thank you.
nice.
You're welcome.
Very nice. Hold on one second. Let me see. Everything changed. I had it all lined up to make it easy. Son of a biscuit.
Well, Zoom took care of that for you.
There you are.
We are. All right, we
you,
have.
you want side by side?
Yeah, we need the other camera. We're getting ready for the holidays, as you can see.
Uh-huh.
He's the only person shorter than me in the shop.
Come over here.
You want me to come over there?
No, I want the camera to come over here.
Of course.
And you. And you, Sharon.
No, I'm not allowed.
So we've got,
This is the same guitar as last time, correct?
this is the same guitar as last time.
Yeah.
This is, so this is a perfect example of a guitar that would come in for work when a customer is bringing in a guitar that says, oh, it's not playing so well, maybe we can improve how it plays, but of course their biggest concern is this pickguard, which is doing the typical Martin thing to it. For a 70s guitar, this is a 62. I'm gonna look up the serial number real quick.
Maybe we should role play this. Can Sharon act like the customer and come in and say, my pick guard is doing weird things, and then hand you the guitar?
So I don't know if we want to do that.
You know?
You
Okay.
don't want to do any role playing, do you, Sharon?
No, you know how I get easily out of control.
Yeah.
Mad at me, so.
So what I'm going to do is go through my routine for examining the guitar, because in a case like this, somebody's coming and bringing in a guitar that is telling me it's playing too hard. It's got a curling pickguard, which is, of course, their primary concern. But
Let's see the razzle dazzle, because you gotta tell somebody that they're in for more than they thought that they were bargaining for.
well, yeah, I'm gonna leave the shtick alone for a little bit, just because we're going to concentrate on the guitar and the aspects of what
Okay.
I'm thinking about while I'm doing the intake, to make sure that I don't wind up having a customer saying, yeah, go ahead and do all of that. We write up the ticket. You get to the bench and you wind up taking it on the chin, because while you're working on it, you come across this, come across that, come across the other thing. And then, of course, your relationship with the customer gets strained, because you're constantly going back to the phone and saying, well, we found something else. We saw this, we saw that, we saw the other thing, and now the bill's going to be higher. Or if it's a big enough repair bill already, you're going to feel to ingratiate yourself to the customer. You can say, you know what, we're going to just throw that in, take care of that as well. And your profitability on that particular job goes lower and lower and lower if more things pop up. So my purpose at the front counter, and it's something I made a mention of last time, is that this is where I make all my money. I earn it at the bench, but this is where it's being made. Not in so much that I'm selling repairs, but that I am noticing repairs, or I'm being cognizant of all the repairs being done. We've probably all been in circumstances where, after calling back a customer one or two times saying, we missed this, we missed that, now we need this, and that's going to add that to the repair bill, or I'll split the difference with you, and all of those negotiations that you go into, sometimes you'll have a customer saying, well, if I knew that when I dropped off the guitar, if I knew it needed all of that, I may not have even had the guitar worked on, which is fine for me. Then I just prefer to hand the guitar back to the customer at the front counter and have him take it home. I don't personally like doing partial repairs to guitars. So, when a guitar needs a new bridge, several braces, crack repairs, refret, nut, whatever the laundry list is, when a customer starts going down the path of saying, well, what if we just do the bridge and we just do that, and then get some strings on it and see how it plays? I normally hand the customer the guitar back at that point and say, I'm really not interested in doing half a job. If you took your car in and it needed a transmission and an axle repaired, if you turn to the auto mechanic and you say, you know what, just take care of the axle, let's see how it drives with the transmission as it is, or vice versa, nobody would be interested in working on that car. Same thing goes for me with any guitar. I'm not interested in doing partial repairs. So a couple of the things that we talked about last time were my
Can I,
intake.
can I stop you right there and
Sure.
just say, I think I'm hoping that you'll explain it the way that I'm thinking, but like partial repairs in my mind always come with way more liability involved in them is the reason why.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
like-
And I will explain that to a customer that, if you let me, or force me, then nobody can force me to do anything I don't want. But if I'm in a position to allow you to take home a guitar that at least is partially structurally unsound, if we find loose braces, for example, well, we all know that guitar strings have a tremendous impact on the health of a guitar because there's always tension there. And the braces are there for a reason. Whether it was a guitar that's designed well from a brace standpoint or not is almost immaterial to this part of the conversation. But if a guitar is allowed to go out without, if we find braces that are loose, that we're allowing to say on the top or even on the back, that we allow the customer to take home with those unrepaired, or a lifting bridge or a crack repair somewhere, in the bridge area of the guitar, we all know that the string tension moving forward is going to wreak havoc with that part of the repair and cause what we're currently charging the customer for. Say if it's a bridge reglue and we neglect to repair a couple of finger braces by the bridge, well, the finger braces are there to spread the tension of the strings and reinforce areas of the top where the strings are pulling the most. So I can guarantee that the bridge I'm gluing on now is going to come sailing back to me in a matter of months with a customer saying, my bridge is coming up after you re-glued it. So in their mind, it's my glue job that failed, not the braces that are continuing to contribute to the instability of their top. So for those kind of reasons, and I'll explain that to a customer, that I'm not going to be in a position to spend the rest of my natural life repairing things that I didn't repair on your guitar the first time, just because you keep having to bring your guitar back to me because you didn't want me to repair those to begin with. I'd rather do the whole job, do it properly in such a way that I can be confident that I'm handing back the guitar as structurally sound a guitar to the customer as possible. And then that, of course, from my side of the counter, from a liability standpoint, allows me to do that in such a way where I know I'm not setting myself up for guitars that come sailing back my way in the future. And we all learn from doing that the wrong way. I learned lessons many times when I was young in this business that I would, kind of say, okay, you know what, you're a nice guy, I'm a nice guy. Let's go ahead and just do this and just do that, and or if you can't afford it, we'll just do this now, and maybe you'll come back and get the rest done on a future date. If it's structural in nature, I don't equivocate on that. That's a deal breaker for me. And if you can't afford to do all of the structural repairs that the guitar needs, I'm not suggesting you take it home and put it through a wood chipper. I'm suggesting you take it home, put it in the back of the closet, take the string tension off it, and when you can afford it, now that you know what they're going to cost to repair, you bring it back and let's do it. But yeah, from a liability standpoint, I'm protecting myself as much as my relationship with the customer moving forward, because I don't want to have to do those repairs again. The same thing goes for shaving bridges beyond what would be considered acceptable in order to avoid a neck reset. Because if I allow myself to do that, when they can't get away with it anymore and they do come back for that neck reset, then I have to be in a position of saying, well, we're going to do a neck reset, but now I have to replace your bridge because we shaved it too low to avoid doing the neck reset that we're doing now. So then I have to charge them to make a new bridge and for the neck reset. Whereas if I didn't allow them to get away with it the first time, I wouldn't be in a position to be having to charge them that extra money. And that just looks bad on me, because you'll have a customer sitting there saying, well, you only shaved that bridge down about 4 or 5 years ago, and now I have to replace it. So I got charged for shaving it down. Now I'm getting charged for replacing it. They feel like they're getting charged for more things than they should be. which in that case I would probably agree with them. You know, so it's a very often the evaluation process involves having those conversations with a customer as I find something to suggest that this is the way we repair it, this is why we repair it, and this is, you know, when I won't repair it. So, you know, if those negotiations are taking place, I can protect myself against taking in something that I would later regret doing, if that answers your question. So back to this, we had our intake form, which is here, that we fill out for the customer. We showed that off last time. I keep the shop's copy of our rate sheet always up at the front counter. This I don't publish. I don't allow customers to take them home. They're just for our purposes. And as I had mentioned last time, there's only one number on there, which is our shop hourly rate. The rest of it is how many hours I've determined as an average we charge for those repairs. The next piece is our guitar diagram, which in this case we will be using the Martin guitar diagram. There are several of them I mentioned before that they're all up on the website that you can print out and use for your own purposes. Some of them were from Dan Earlywine's repair book. Other ones were just stuff I found around the web. And like that, so we'll get started with this. As we stated before, this guitar came in because somebody was complaining about this here and the action playing really high. Part of my job when I entered this part of the process is as I said before, I'm not in the business of selling somebody on repairs. They can make their own decision. My job is to figure out everything that the guitar needs and make suggestions along the way. If I point something out, if a customer says, well, yeah, that's always bothered me, I can then make a suggestion, well, we can handle it this way, or we can handle it that way. And I can help you this way, or I can help you that way. Say if it's a cosmetic part of a repair, or if it's a repair that somebody's done in the past that we want to either undo, or would be better for the guitar if we were to undo it, or better for the guitar if we just leave it alone, you know, and consider just, you know, the quote unquote, you know, not damage, but, you know, whatever injury has already been done. As in the case in this guitar, just as an aside, we'll notice here that I don't think many people have seen a Gibson style truss rod on a Martin guitar. So this guitar also came in with that, and of course it's the first thing I saw when it was coming out of the case, and I couldn't help but say, well, when was this done? And they told me, and I said, well, okay, well, that in and of itself, somebody wanted to convert a 1970. This is a 1970 D35, so it's the first year that the D35 was made. Somewhere along the line, somebody decided to convert this guitar apparently to a guitar with a truss rod in it. I'm presuming, based on what I see, and we'll do that a little bit later, but I'm presuming what they did was they pulled the neck, dropped the truss rod, put the fingerboard back on, because I can see evidence of that having been done. Put the binding back, then refretted it. And they never took the neck off the body. So I would have preferred it, if it were to be converted to a Martin style truss rod that would have been in through the sound hole. Or my first choice would have just been to reset the neck the way you would normally need to with a guitar with a non-adjustable truss rod. But if I were converting it to a truss rod, that's what I would have recommended.
Doug, have you put a wrench on this truss rod yet?
Nope.
This alleged truss rod?
We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that live right now.
Oh,
so,
wow.
But the first thing I do when I'm checking out a customer's guitar is I lay it down on its face. I always look at the back of a guitar first, because nobody looks at the back of a guitar. Everybody has a tendency to start here, You look at the neck, you look at the frets, you look at the inside, you look at the bridge, you look at all here. This always gets forgotten as far as I'm concerned. So I'll turn a guitar over and I'll check the back. And I'm checking mostly with my fingers. I want to see what I feel, if there are any cracks. I'm checking visually too, to see if there are any cracks involved. I don't see any cracks on this particular guitar. I see a nasty gouge here. I don't know if that's coming through, if you want to tighten up on it. But I see a nasty gouge
Yep,
in
we're
the back
getting
of the guitar. Yeah. So
You
that,
want both cameras going still, or would you prefer one
yeah,
camera?
we can go. You want both cameras or just that camera? I think just the, well, we can do both cameras.
Okay, that's fine.
So I got a nasty gouge here, and I got some bad dents here that are probably indicative of the guitar taking a fall. I would point those out to a customer and just judge their reaction. If somebody says, yeah, that fell off a stand, or it was sitting on the couch when it shouldn't have, or whatever the story that comes with it, if, you know, then that gives them the opportunity to tell me if it's important to them or not. If they say, hey, can you do anything about that? I can say, yeah, I can. We can touch it up, and I'll give them the options of how I would possibly address that and what the prices are. And if they decided to go for it, that's fine. And I'll make a note of that on the back of a guitar. I will take my sheet here, and I will, with a pen and a highlighter, I will, yeah, I'll hold it up, yeah. So I will mark precisely where the gouge is and the dents, and then highlight it. For the customer as we're discussing it. And that does two things for me. One, I now have a record of the marks on the back of the guitar, so that if I were doing an intake on a guitar that I never looked at the back on, and the customer said, yeah, okay, let's do this, that, and the other thing, everything we came up with. And then when they came to pick up the guitar, they're admiring how good their guitar plays and looking at how good their guitar looks, and that they turn it over and they'll point to it and they'll go, this wasn't here when I dropped it off whatever number of months ago. And then we have to have that unfortunate conversation. If I do this, that conversation never has to take place. So I just lost my, there it is. So while I'm on the back, the next thing I do, I don't see any cracks. I pick up the guitar and we start doing our little tap test. And I can hear that snare drum sound. Is it coming through?
I hear a loose brace.
Yep. And I'm hearing several places that there are loose braces. So I know.
That's your opportunity to ask them if they can hear that.
Yes, absolutely. What I typically will also do to demonstrate that for a customer, what it is they're hearing, is I will grab a feeler gauge from outside of from my drawer over here, and I will show them that if I tap on a guitar that's healthy, it sounds like a drum. If I tap on a guitar that has a loose brace, and I will hold the feeler gauge this way, it exaggerates the sound for them, and they can hear that snare drum type sound. And once they acknowledge that, I say we have a number of loose braces that we have to check inside the guitar to see if they're there. And I note on my worksheet, loose braces.
Carlos wants to know.
And that is now marked on my sheet. I've yet to count them up, but we know we have loose braces coming. Yeah, what does Carlos want to know?
Let's see here. Carlos asks, what do you do in case of someone dropping the guitar in and picking it up who is not the owner, maybe the wife of the owner? That ever come up?
Well, that depends. That's a great question. And that is something that informs your decisions about how you want to do your intake. I am loathsome of having intakes being done where I'm examining the guitar over the phone for a customer or in a phone call. If I have somebody who calls me up and says, yeah, I want to have my wife, my girlfriend, my gardener, my driver, my nephew, my best friend down the street drop a guitar off for me, I suggest to them that I'd really, really prefer to meet them. And sometimes I'll put it in the context of saying, I appreciate that we're all busy, but I would really prefer to have you and your guitar come meet with me at the same time. If we can find a time to do that, let's find a time to do that, because not only do I want to examine your guitar and have you understand what's necessary to be done to your guitar, I really want to meet you too. If you're a faceless person on the phone, and on occasion, I have had customers. I have one customer that I can think of that I've worked on 20 of his guitars, and every time whoever's dropped it off was his caretaker for his estate or something like that. He's a wealthy guy. We also have the understanding that, after the first couple of guitars I've done for him, he drops off a guitar, I fix it, I call him when it's done, I tell him when it's ready, and I tell him how much it's going to cost. He doesn't want to know what happens in between. He trusts me. He's a dream customer. He has somebody drop off the guitar. After the first few times, he called me up on the phone. He said, Doug, he says, all of that estimating stuff you're sending me and filling my inbox with, I don't want to see them. He says, whatever the guitar takes, whatever the bill comes to, I don't care. Just fix it. Whatever you think it needs is what I'm going to agree to anyway. Whatever the bill is, it's fine. I wish I had 100 of those customers. But in those, unless it's a rare circumstance like that, I really prefer to have the customer here. I prefer doing live intakes. The attitude that I have towards my interaction at the counter is that it takes whatever time it takes. Not to throw shade on anybody's way of doing thing. I have heard, like when we talk about this on the Luthalong, I'll hear people say, oh, I need the customer in and out of here in 15, 20 minutes just because I got to get back to my bench and start making money. As I said before, this is where I make my money. So if it takes me a half an hour to do it, 45 minutes to do it, an hour to do it, I don't care, because this is where the money is made. I earn it at the bench, but I make it here. So if I'm rushing through this process, I'm more apt to leave money on the table. And that, to me, is the most important part of this aspect. You get into banter with a customer, the back and forth, they're more interested in telling you the stories of their guitar conquests from 1972 when they had the first, Framus whatever that hit New York, and all of that stuff is fascinating. And I usually let all of those words kind of sail by and, acknowledge them by while I'm thinking about what's going on in front of me. But so in those circumstances, I don't deal with a lot of them because I've chosen to steer people away from those things. If you want to send somebody with a big envelope of cash to come pick up the guitar, I'm fine with that. It could be anybody you want, because at that point, the interaction is more just about completing the transaction. I prefer the customer come pick up the guitar because I want them to go into my customer lounge over here that we showed you last time and sit down and play and take as long as they need. So then if I need to do any adjustments, I can do it right then, rather than have them get home and then call me 3 hours later saying, I got home and I noticed it's a little bit hard when I play the B flat on the G string. Okay, so I wish you would have told me that when you were here so I could adjust it for you, or we could discuss it before you go home, rather than, having you come play a few chords on the guitar. Okay, great, here's your money. We'll see you next time, or we'll see you again, and try to get them out of the shop very quickly. I would rather take the time to let them play the guitar. And that's why we have our customer lounge here. Remember last time we were talking about the whole psychology behind the setup of having our intake area for the customer experience. It's also for us to maximize the money we make doing the job we do. So back to the back of the guitar. Does that answer your question, Carlos? Yes, good, okay. So while I'm on the back, I then move to the sides of the guitar, and I check physically the sides of the guitar, both on the treble side and the bass side, or the bass side and the treble side in this case. And in this case, I can feel it right away. I've got a crack on the side of the guitar. It's right here. I can feel a crack. It's running from about here to here. I don't yet know if it's quote unquote in the surface. I find most cracks are not in the surface. But I want to know if it's been repaired before or if I have to address it or point it out to the customer. It's on the treble side. It's a typical key, what we used to call, and probably still do call, a key crack. You know, somebody has a big bulging, group of keys on a keychain in their pocket and they set the guitar down on it. So I'm going to use naphtha, which is one of the most important materials in the shop. And we're going to pour it right on the crack like that, right on the guitar. I have some paper towels up here that I can wipe the excess. And I just let it puddle up on the guitar. Don't let it drip all over the side of the guitar. And then I flip the guitar back. On this side, I have a mirror or a flashlight at the front counter. My flashlight, I look in the guitar. It's a little deep to see there, so I'll grab my mirror. And sure enough, it's staining the inside of the top from here all the way up to here. I can see a nice dark line of naphtha, which will evaporate as soon as anybody blows on it. But I can see the crack in there. So, you know, I can point it out to the customer. I can go to the treble side of the guitar on my diagram and draw a line for where it is. Side crack. Highlight it with my highlighter. Put it on the top of my list. And as I'm doing that, I can put it on my diagram and leave it here. If I'm of the opinion that the customer is going to leave the guitar, I will begin also at that point, because I'll have the conversation with the customer saying, this is going to be a big job. We're going to probably be talking not hundreds of dollars, but thousands of dollars, because there are so many things that I'm going to be finding that are wrong. And we soften that blow at the early part of the conversation. They look at me and say, look, you know, anything it takes to get this guitar back in service. Has been an old friend for such and such and so and so. They'll tell you a few stories about their early conquests in their early 1970s when they were almost signed by the same, you know, manager as Crosby, Stills and Nash, and all of those wonderful stories that they'll tell you. Then I start filling out my sheet. I put their name up on top. We're calling this person Joey. I put down ask them for their telephone number. I will put down the information about the guitar. It's a Martin D35. The serial number was, which I forgot, 267862. That goes right on the top of my intake form. And I also, just so I have the reference on my little sheet here, D35 267862. And I have my serial number at the top of this sheet, so I have that. And so we're moving right along. We had the side crack that we found. I don't see anything on the bass side. Everything looks good there. I look at the butt of the guitar here. And this routine is the same routine I go through with every guitar. For me, it's the same dance routine I do whether it's acoustic or electric. Electric guitars have a few different things involved. They have different hardware. Of course, they have electronics involved, which a lot of acoustic guitars don't. So there are those separating factors, but this is the same dance I do because it's the same dance that gives me all the information I need every time, so I'm not leaving anything on the table. So once I've checked out this area, I bring the guitar back up this way. At this point, I'm holding the guitar in this fashion, looking at the butt end of the guitar. And I swing the guitar up, keep from smacking it on the counter, and I look at it this way. Or I look at it usually, if I'm doing it in front of the customer, I'm doing it for the camera over here, but I'm usually looking at it this way at the front counter. So after I've looked at the butt, I bring the guitar back up to the counter here. As I'm doing that, I look this way, and I'll just hold the guitar like it's a giant violin. I can see right under the bridge. And in this case, I can see that the bridge is lifting. So I need to bring that up with the customer. And that's the next part of our conversation, is we're starting at the bridge. I tell them that I can see the bridge lifting, and I'm going to demonstrate it for them. And so I reach over here, and just as a reiteration, if you want to just bring the cat, let me just grab this here. Just as a reiteration of last time, remember I said I keep everything I need for doing evaluations up at the front counter, so I don't have to say to a customer, oh, I apologize, but I got to run into the shop and grab something. I'll be right back. As little as I want to avoid that happening as much as possible. If I find I don't have something at the front counter that I need to do an evaluation for, I buy it next time. I buy it the next day. And so that next time it's up here. So sometimes it does mean you have almost a complete second set of tools at the front counter. I prefer to make that expenditure so I'm not wasting time running back and forth several times during an evaluation. I can get through the evaluation quicker. I reach up here. I have a number of feeler gauges that I have stored here of different gauges. All of the feeler gauges that I'm using for these kind of purposes, I mount into handles and mark the handles with the size of the feeler gauge. So I grab a feeler gauge and I stick it in behind the bridge to demonstrate to the customer that it is lifting, that I can get it in there, and how far I can get it in there. Right now I'm in there that far, put my thumb right up against the bridge that way, and I pull out the feeler gauge. Now I just rest this against the top of the guitar and demonstrate for the customer that I put that into the guitar, put my thumb up there, that's hitting the bridge pins. So it's actually probably looser than that, but at least it demonstrates for the customer how far in I'm able to get. And that may inform your conversation with the customer. If I have a 1970s or 80s Guild and I can only get in there as I do it, maybe, an eighth of an inch, well, that informs me as well, because what I might be running into, if I'm hitting a dead point only an eighth of an inch all the way around the back of the guitar, that quite frankly might actually be my glue line, because we know a lot of Guild guitars were finished an eighth of an inch inside the bridge, just like a lot of Martin guitars from about 2002 to about 2000, I think it was about 2007 when they got their head straight about it. There was a period of time where Martin was doing that thing where they were extending the finish 1/8 of an inch around the entire bridge. I think they started around 2005 or 2002, I think. And they went on for a number of years, and the number of bridge failures that they were experiencing went up exponentially. So I can demonstrate that for the customer. I can mark my work order on the bridge, that my bridge at a minimum must be removed and re-glued. And that goes also on my bridge removal and re-glue. Now at this point, when I'm building the estimate, for the customer's sake, I will be writing the number of what the repair costs here, because I'll refer to my rate sheet. for the purposes of time here, I'm not going to write down each number because we're going to see that as we get to the office computer. So we do have a number of loose braces that we still have to count. I have a bridge removal and reglue. I have a side crack. And the customer wants to know how much, you know, the cosmetic work on the back of the guitar is. Or the customer may have said to me, let's pretend in this case where the customer said, you know what, you know, it is whatever it is that fell on a gig, and, you know, I have the memories of that gig, you know, embodied in my guitar. So, you know, some customers don't mind the quote unquote character on the guitar. Others will say, when you point it out to them as I'm examining the guitar, they'll go, yeah, I remember when that happened, and it kills me every time I open it up and look at the back of the guitar. I open up the case. If I'm looking at the back of the guitar, it just bruises me every time I see it. That's your opportunity to say, hey, look, I can touch that up if it bothers you. And that's what I mean by I'm not selling repairs. I'm selling the opportunity to help a customer with something that, you know, they would prefer to have done. So we're back at the bridge. I've marked that on both my sheets there. We're going to look directly over at the pick guard, and I'm going to highlight the pick guard. And the pick guard, I'll explain to them why it's happening if they want to know, but we need to replace the pick guard. And that's what I call a Martin pick guard replacement, because it's a Martin and there's particular reasons why it's happening. Then I can see right here, I can see a crack. You know, we can see the you know, the typical Martin crack by the pick guard that I want to know if it's been repaired or not. So then some naphtha goes right on the crack. Pick up the excess. I can already tell it's all the way through. It went right in there. So with my mirror and my flashlight, which was here. Oh, here it is. And my flashlight, we look in there and sure, yep, it's stained. So I can mark that here on my drawing, highlight it, put that Martin pickguard crack. And it's going to take one cleat, because I'm a believer in cleating cracks. So I'll explain to a customer what a cleat is if they've never heard of it and why they need one. And that's, again, where this comes in. It's easier for me to draw a picture for the customer so they get an idea of what it is they need. It's also why I have this, because if I want to demonstrate what a cleat is, there we go. I can show them. So I can say here, that's what a cleat looks like. That's what it is. This is what it's for. So these are part of the tools that I use when I'm at the front counter. And I'll stress, making my money. So now that we're on the top, I'm ready to dive inside the guitar or look at the neck, depending on which way I want to look first. Before I do that, while I'm looking at the top, I'm looking to see if there are any other cracks there. I'm looking at it. We haven't looked inside the guitar. So like I said, this is the same routine in the same order I always do them. Then if I don't see any other cracks to speak of, then we take our naphtha and I pour it along each side of the neck, because there are, on a guitar this age, this old, that's showing this number of frailties, I want to know if the guitar is cracked along either side of the fingerboard, which is something that's commonly missed. My mirror goes inside the guitar, and I can see a nice dark line running all the way down both sides of this fingerboard. So I've got that stain mark running all the way up on both sides, so I have a crack along either side of the fingerboard. I'll explain to the customer that it's for where it comes from, which is the fingerboard glued to the face, dries and it shrinks. It's going to pull the top wood with it and cause cracks along the side of the fingerboard. So we'll mark them on our drawing. I will mark it on my list. Fingerboard FBD side crack. And at that point, I'll quickly look up on my sheet how much it costs, or if I remember it. Now, at this point, we're done looking at the entire outside of the guitar. I can move up to the fingerboard and the frets, or I can move inside of the guitar. My preference, since I've got string tension on the guitar, is to talk about this. My first curiosity, of course, is seeing what's going on in underneath the truss rod. So I'm going to take our screwdriver. We can see it. This also lives permanently on my front counter for all parts to go back to the customer, because how many times has a customer taken home a guitar that you later found their truss rod cover underneath the bench? So there is what I suspected, a Gibson style truss rod, 5/16 nut underneath the truss cover. This, by the way, is something we all need to know about if you don't know about it already. A bunch of us on the Luthalong have discussed these puppies. I love this thing. I have one at every bench in the shop. It's a DeWalt electric screwdriver, has a light on it, the usual electric screwdriver. You can use it as a gun form or a straight. The beautiful thing about this is that it's gyroscopic, which means it'll turn whichever way I'm turning the screwdriver. And it'll also slow down and speed up depending on how fast I move, how deep I turn it. So it's, everybody probably already knows about that, but they're wonderful to have. So the truss rod is here. I'm going to see if a Gibson style nut truss rod wrench, it fits on there fine. And I'm going to loosen it to see if it is active. And then I'm going to tighten it to see if it does anything. And sure enough, it does. It's active, and it's taking me from relief to negative relief fairly well. So whoever put it in there did okay. You know, the binding work is a little questionable. The fretwork certainly was a little bit questionable, but the installation of the truss rod looks at least successful. It's got plenty of travel. It doesn't have too many threads sticking out. The cavity is a little, you know, it's like somebody did it with a spoon, but when it's covered, you can't tell it's there. So I suppose it was a successful job. You know, I don't necessarily know that I would suggest undoing it at this point. The damage has already been done, and it works. So there's no harm, no foul. So at that point, we know what we're dealing with the truss rod. I'm going to put it back. Go ahead.
Can I, just for my own curiosity, can I suggest one more inspection on the truss rod?
Sure.
Can you just tap on the back of the neck and make sure that it's not
Sure.
rattling in there?
Yeah. I don't hear anything.
Cool.
I hear some of the loose braces still.
I wonder. I wonder if he slipped it right down that square tube, or if he pulled the square tube out of it.
I don't know. That would be interesting to know.
Because
I
that
don't-
square tube gets plenty of bend to it too.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thought. I don't know the name of the person who did the work. That was never told to me. Or if it was, I didn't recognize it.
We're going through a like the sign in for this, but do you think if this came to you and you weren't trying to do a demonstration for the Luth group, do you think you'd just dive right into the truss rod right off the bat just to kind of find out
Yeah,
whether or not,
curiosity would probably get the better of me at that point.
or if it was just like a non-starter, like if that thing wasn't working, like would you be tempted just to let them know that it was maybe a lost cause? Or
Yeah, well, I would let them know that it's either not going to help our efforts to get the guitar to do what we want, or if it's useful. So then if examining it and finding that it was what we found now, which is it's functional, lets me know that I don't have to worry too much about fret work, because I can adjust the neck to be where I need it to be. When the fretwork part comes up. If it didn't function at all, then I would say we're going to still have to treat this guitar as if it's a non-adjustable truss rod, even though somebody tried to put one in and it's got a nut that spins on it. It's not really helping. So at this point, we'll talk about two things. After I've determined that, the next thing I'm going to grab is my straight edge. I'm going to take a straight edge and I'm going to extend it right down to the bridge. And I want to see where the bridge lines up with the neck. And in this case, it's lining up actually pretty low. It's not horrible, but it's pretty low. So it doesn't necessarily look like somebody did a neck reset, or they probably did. Let me see if somebody did yeah, it looks like somebody did do a neck reset. We've got a missing chunk here that somebody put some wood in and touched up. It's not a terrible job. I don't know if that comes through, but you can see this big chunk back here that somebody did, and you can see a lot of the kind of chatter marks of the here and here along the back. You can see a lot of the marks of what would betray having a neck reset having been done, if it wasn't touched up well. In this case, it was not. There's a lot of missing finish there. I can feel the fret ends are super sharp every time I touch it. I'm checking to make sure that I'm not bleeding.
Doug, can I ask you a question about where you're at with this right now? Like,
Yeah.
it occurs to me that you're checking things that that require having strings on it. It's not uncommon for a guitar like this to come in with no strings on it, or a few strings broke, or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, would you take the time to string up a guitar to do an inspection, or would you just kind of make your best guess with strings off?
It depends. Sometimes, it depends on what if there's structural things going on that I can't tell how they're reacting or would react if it mattered, or if there's things going on with the neck that I want to see how it's reacting under string tension, I might suggest to the customer, let me throw a junk set of strings on here just so we can see it. Usually you can tell. Plus, if we're talking about, in this case already, chances are I'm doing a neck reset, which goes on the list. And then as a follow-up, I'm going to be replacing the frets. These frets are in miserable condition. They are coming up, out of the slots all over the place. So, that's able to go up under the slots of the strings, and it's grabbing on to feeler gauges all over the place. I can feel them, and I can see them coming up out of the slots. They look like they've been filed pretty roughly, and they're super flat and they're super low. There's some wear in it. So I'm doing a refret as a result. That, of course, comes with the conversation to the customer about I won't do a neck reset without doing a refret regardless, because I consider them part and parcel of the same job. If I'm doing an angle change on a neck, I'm always refretting it. And that goes with the conversations, with we're talking among lutes, so we understand that. I will take the time to tell the customer, why I feel it's necessary to refret or why it needs a neck reset. In this case, I'm looking at my action, and we are with the first finger depressed at the 12th fret. I am at about 10/64, maybe 9/64, somewhere in between, 10/64 of an inch. So that's a pretty high action. It's actually the same on the treble side, 9/64. So that's pretty high.
Can,
Go ahead.
oh, I also wanted to maybe talk a little bit about, seeing, we all know what a D35 is going to go like, that's come straight from the factory, but like a D35 that has clearly had a questionable neck reset, it does feel like you could be going in blind. Well, I mean, you can't see the inside of the.
You can't, and you.
Do you do anything to let the customer know that you can't, you're not going to X-ray the guitar, but you may need to call them afterwards if somebody's done something really wackadoo in there, or.
This goes hand in hand with our pricing discussion. I
Yeah.
price my jobs in such a way where I don't have that second phone call.
Okay.
My neck resets are priced in such a way that no matter what I find, even if it's
You're covered.
I'm covered.
Okay.
Especially when we're dealing with evidence of all of this having been done. We got a chunk of wood that was put in here. We got all sorts of funkiness going on here. This neck may not come off very well. I'm looking forward to foam cutters having their way with it, because I don't know what's been done. I don't know how many, shims are stacked up in there. I don't know what kind of, adventurism happened in the neck joint. So, but that's, to answer that question, that's why I price things the way I do. So I don't call customers back and say it's going to cost you more on rare occasions. Sometimes when something is discussed, I have a Gibson in the shop now that when he left it with me, it was just for fret work and some structural repairs. And I told him that the binding was very tenuous and looked terrible. It was, cracked like every half an inch all the way around and likely to come flaking off. And some of it did at the front counter. I said, I'll try to be, and there was even some tape kind of holding it on all the way around the guitar. And he said he didn't want to do anything about it. He didn't mind the tape being there. I said, well, okay, if you don't care, it's not my guitar. I'm not playing with it. So, the job was to make it structurally sound and, and do the fret work. While the guitar was here, he called me back and said, I've been thinking about that binding. What would it cost to do? Well, I told him, and he decided to add that to the job. We made sure he was aware that it was costing more than the original estimate. And oh, by the way, now that we're doing that, that extends its stay with us. So whatever we said it was going to cost in terms of time has now been extended. And sure enough, in a job like that, I told him I didn't know what I was going to find once I pulled the binding. Sure enough, as soon as I pulled the binding, we noticed the top, we pulled the binding on the back first. As soon as I pulled the binding on the back, I saw all sorts of seam separations where the back was kept separating from the side. So in a case like that, I did call him back saying, well, the consequence of taking off the binding was now we have seam separations to do. And I warned him about that when we started talking about binding. There's a reason why the binding was cracking all the way around on a Gibson guitar. Gibson guitars don't typically gas off on the binding like a Gretsch does. But Gibsons start having all sorts of binding problems when the side and the top or the back plate and the sides start shifting from each other due to loose seams. That, oh, by the way, the binding was the only thing holding that thing together. So it depends on the circumstances, but In most cases, I'm loath to call a customer back saying, oh, you know that guitar that you left with me that we're doing all sorts of repairs to, I came across this and it's going to cost you more. Or, you know, I told you the neck reset was going to cost X, but now that I've opened it up, I've noticed that somebody was in here doing this, that, the other thing, or what have you. And that always sounds terrible from the customer's standpoint. So I'd rather price my jobs appropriately up front so that that conversation can't take place later or doesn't have to take place later. So we're doing a neck reset. We're doing a refret at this point. I'm just going to add replace nut to the invoice and replace saddle, because I know a neck reset is going to come hand in hand with both. Now we're ready to dive inside the guitar, which is when I'm going to remove the strings from the guitar. Or at least loosen the strings so I can get my hands inside the guitar. If I'm sure that the customer is leaving it with me, I might even ask at that point if it's okay if I just take the strings off altogether. So this way they're not in my way.
Doug, do you have a Frank crank?
I do not. If he makes them again, I'll get one.
Okay.
I normally use, I left it at I pulled the one I have up here. I normally actually use this thing to do for the tuners, but I left a little tuner attachment at the other bench. I stole it the other day because I needed a second one.
I was just, it was odd to hear that Dunlop clip clop of the,
So now that I've got the strings loose, we can dive in the guitar. The mirror goes inside the guitar, and my first stop is the bridge plate. I'll quickly show you. If this is our guitar, if you want to zoom in on that.
excellent camera work, Sharon.
So can you see the outline of the guitar there?
We can indeed.
My first stop for my tour of the inside is the bridge plate. I'm looking at the condition of the holes to see whether or not they need to be repaired, what the bridge pins look like. I'm looking to see whether or not there's any cracks in the bridge plate. I'm looking in the front and the back of the bridge plate to see if it's got a fold to it, where it's got deep shadows that I might have to get my hand in there and check with a feeler gauge whether or not it's separating from the top. This particular guitar has a little bit of a pregnant bulge behind it, and it's sinking deeply in front of the sound hole. That I noticed when I was checking the top of the guitar, so I'm suspecting that could just be from cantilevering of the bridge, since the bridge is so loose that it's tilting forward and kind of pulling the top with it. Or it could be a failure of the bridge plate. I've yet to check to see these braces around here to see whether or not it's related to any braces loose. But those are all the things I'm looking for at the bridge plate.
Is that one of those giant rosewood bridge plates on that?
It is.
Okay.
From here, I do the same inspection for every guitar. I start here, I work my way from there. I check my main X up and down. I come back down and check my tone bars. And like I said, I have a routine that's a dance for the same for every guitar, of course, with variations in bracing structure. If I'm doing a classical guitar, there's slight difference to it. But then I do the tone bars, then I come up to my finger braces. I work back over to my finger braces here, and I come back up here. Of course, you can see the struts or any kind of sound hole support that you might have. I come to the upper struts and the transverse brace here, check that, and then I'm looking at the head block. And I want to see if there's any gaps there. From there, I switch to the back of the guitar, and I also check now for those back braces that we know are loose. But that's the routine I do with all acoustic guitars. I start here, go to my X, come down my X, move to my tone bars, my finger braces, come back up my X, my transverse braces, my head block, and then I'm out. This
Doug,
way,
what kind of? Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you, what kind of moves are you using for that? Are you slipping feeler gauges? Are you pushing on the top? Are you tapping, or combination of everything?
My initial gambit, it's a combination of everything. My initial gambit is always with the mirror and the light
And just looking.
and just looking. Right off the bat, I can tell you that my E string, my A string, my D string are nowhere to be found. The ball ends of the strings are all disappeared up into the plate. I can only see about half of the G string ball and half of the B string, and the high E string looks okay. So right off the bat, I know I have bridge plate work to do on the pinholes, which I've not been bashful about it before. I'm a huge believer in the StewMac bridge saver that Dan invented. So at this point, I would suggest that repair to the customer if we find nothing else wrong with the bridge plate. And this is an example of not, as I said before, I'm not in the business of selling repairs, but I'm in the business of informing my customer. So I took the time to make a small mock-up of a bridge plate. It shows you what a good bridge pin hole should look like, a bad bridge pin hole does look like. It shows you a healthy bridge pin hole and a bad bridge pin hole. And then it shows you what the repair in removing the affected area of the plate and making a disc of little wood, as we all know from the StewMac thing that goes in there. And then I can demonstrate what the repair looks like to the customer right in front of them without having to draw pictures. This saves a ton of time of trying to explain that there's this thing that's called the Bridge Saver. There's this company called StewMac that makes it. There's this guy, Dan Earlywine, who's in Ohio, who is the best thing since sliced bread and pizza, that invented this thing. And this is how it works and why it works and everything else. I can just show them and say, this is what I'd like to do to your guitar, because right now, the bridge pins, the ball ends of those strings are all pulling either on the top or on the bottom of the bridge and no longer your bridge plate. We can discuss what the bridge plate's job is, which is to spread the pressure of the strings so that it's not pulling all in one location, and inform your customer that way. This sells the repair for me. They now understand why it needs to be done. This is my recommendation for doing it. If we want to discuss alternatives, I can do that at that time. If you have a somewhat knowledgeable customer who says, yeah, I had something like that done on my D18, and the guy chose to do this, that, or the other thing with wood dust and glue, and then a plate cap, or whatever the circumstances are, I can either give them my opinions about why I prefer this versus another method, and we can discuss all of those things. Which we will be when we do the bridge plate episode of the D&D show. But for now, that's for me demonstrating to the customer what needs to be done. So we need to do a plate repair with the discs. We just call it a plate repair. Going back to my examination of the bridge plate, I extend my mirror way far back, tilted towards me. I can see the back of the bridge plate looks pretty healthy, pretty reasonably flat. It's about the size of an aircraft carrier, so it's probably pretty stable. I don't see any kind of separation at the front, so I don't necessarily see any kind of, cupping of the bridge plate where the bridge plate may be coming away from the top. If it does, I might suggest at that point maybe we need to remove and replace the bridge plate. Or if it's cracked, we can discuss that too. This bridge plate actually looks pretty flat and pretty healthy. So from there, I'm looking up my X brace to the back of the guitar, all the way up to the top. I see a pencil line that could be a separation, so I'll make note of that. I look on the other bridge plate, the other brace, X brace, all the way from the back to all the way through the top. Same thing. It's hard to tell in a couple of spots that could be a pencil line, it could be a separation. I can definitely, now I go back down to my other X brace and I can definitely see I have one finger brace, the number one finger brace on my treble side is loose. It looks like it might be loose behind that on the X. My number one finger brace on the bass side is loose. And same thing could be the case for my X behind that. The upper X looks good on both sides, except with the exception of one spot near the sound hole here. Upper transverse brace looks pretty good. So now that I've done my visual inspection, I grab my 5/1000 feeler gauge. Sometimes I'll grab a 7, depends on what I feel like. Anything smaller than that, they have a tendency to, if I go with a small 4 or 3/1000 feeler gauge, we're gonna head here somewhere. Oh, here we go. You know, if you're pushing that up against a brace, very often they wind up just kind of folding rather than being able to get into a gap, even if the gap is that small, just because they. So I'll take my 5 or my 7, and now I'll pull out. Now I put my hand inside the guitar and I start working my way around exactly as I just did visually. I start working my way up in this case, my treble X brace, and sure enough, I'm getting under that gap right behind the first finger brace. The first finger brace was visually loose, and I can get under there. I can get in between the X brace, between the first and the second X brace, first and second finger brace. Second finger brace is fine. I extend my way down the X. I can't get in anywhere there. I come back up. I go to the upper side of that treble X brace, which is obviously now on our bass side. And I work there near the sound hole, right up to the X. That's all good. Now I want to check my opposite X. On the bass side, I can get under the finger brace. I can get under the gap between first finger brace and the second finger brace. So it's the same problem on both sides. I can get all the way up without a problem. I'll use my other hand for that. Somebody's ringing our doorbell.
Can you tell them I said hi?
If it's somebody with a guitar case, everybody quiet and let's pretend we're not here and turn out the light. Huh?
Is it somebody delivering a holiday-inspired animatronic guitar player?
Hi, how are you? Hi, I don't know if you remember
Yes.
me, Doug. I had a
What's
question.
his name again?
Mitch.
Mitch. I can't talk right now.
Okay.
We're in the middle of filming a TV show.
Oh my God. Oh, so sorry.
Thanks,
okay.
Mitch.
Okay.
Email me.
I'll stop by again. All right.
Okay.
Or
Don't just
email.
stop by because our hours
Not
are
as
by
good.
appointment.
Okay.
Our hours are by appointment
I
now.
was hoping you'd be here. Okay. all
Thanks,
right,
Mitch.
Thank you.
It's always a Mitch, isn't it?
Mitch says hi.
Okay.
So back in here, we were working on.
Did he have a guitar case with him?
No, but he did have a question about a guitar.
When I was working at at the shop in Brooklyn, like the first rule I made was like, in order to talk to the repair people, you had to have a guitar case in your hand. I want to talk about alleged guitars.
So now I'm checking the bass, upper X, and I can get in between. There's a gap between right up by the sound hole, up by the pick guard, underneath the pick guard.
I know that. I know that one.
Yeah.
That's got that nice white glue.
Yeah. So
Doesn't it?
yeah, some liquid sandpaper is definitely going to be used on that one.
What's liquid sandpaper? I'm not familiar with that.
I gave you some.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Have you tried it yet?
I have not.
Have you tried that yet, Dan? The liquid sandpaper?
I think Dan got distracted. He might.
Okay.
Dan, are you still there? Dan, early one.
There's about 40 some of us that are very jealous of that.
Dan's
I'm
there.
here.
You tried the liquid sandpaper yet?
The what?
The liquid sandpaper.
Apparently not.
I have played with it. I haven't done a job with it, but I've put it on some thin sheets of the stainless.
Again, we have some customers about to walk in.
Have you, Ian?
Not yet, no.
All right, so to recap, I've got finger braces, the gap behind the finger brace between the first and second finger brace on the X braces. I have on the treble side where the pickguard crack is, there's a loose X brace from the cross on the X up to about the first sound hole support. And that's it for the top. Then we dive right back in, and I'm going to look at back braces. And one,
Hold on one second. Mix home, and I think I locked her out. I'll be right back.
one. Second one's fine. Or second side is fine. Bass side is fine. Treble side we're loose. Bass side we're loose. Number 3. Bass side we're loose. Treble side we're loose. Number 4. Treble side we're loose. About 2 inches in. That one's less than the others. Bass side I'm loose from the whole length. So on the back, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I have that marked for all the back braces. You can see my loose braces here on the top. There, 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 and there. So that all gets on my list. For where I originally put my loose braces, I can put 7 back segments. Now we used to, when I would write up my sheet, I would write loose back brace, number 1 treble, loose back brace, number 2 treble, number 2 bass, etc., 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 and have all sorts of writing to be done. This saves me the hassle of having to do that. I can visually see which ones of the back are needing repair. And then I have 5 top segments.
Hey, Doug, I heard there was a new tool out to help hold those down when you reglue them.
Yeah, there is.
Yes, it's bring
And
them.
it makes life easier for both of us, because when you're working on the guitar, you can easily tick off which one is done when it's done. This travels with the guitar, this travels with the work order that we're going to do the thing. So that, in essence, right there, the guitar has had its complete examination, and I can guarantee you that there's nothing going to come up at the front counter. The one thing inside that I will check finally when I'm done is to make sure that there's no gap between the heel block and the back of the guitar, so that you don't have any slipping of the heel block, because that's something that's commonly missed. This one seems nicely intact. And I'll do the same thing at the top, along the sides and the front of the heel block as well. Visually, the heel block showed no issues. I didn't see any gaps or anything like that. So that's the entire examination that I would go through with any guitar. So before we move to the computer, very quickly, I'm just going to throw another guitar up here just to show another example of, this is not the typical guitar. This is the typical 1970s Martin, because they all look like this, at least the ones I see. But except for the truss rod. The truss rod was unique, granted. But we're going to throw another guitar up here that is more of a typical, hey Doug, I got my Santa Cruz that I want to bring in just for a setup, which is what typically happens. And the reason why I bring it up is that the notion that you're going to severely limit the time at the front counter with your customer is going to wind up making you take it on the chin more times than not. I don't let my customers do my diagnoses for me. So if I get a customer to call me up and says, oh, my Martin guitar just needs this, that, or the other thing, can I bring it in? Well, yeah, you can bring it in anytime you want. I'll tell you what the guitar needs when you bring it in. I don't say that, but I'll say, sure, bring it in. And then I do my examination, and I'll suggest to the customer as I'm doing it, well, I know you just want to set up, but you know what? Let's give the guitar a good, healthy examination, just to make sure that the guitar is healthy, just to make sure the guitar doesn't, have any problems. And I'll go through the same routine. I'm not going to go through the whole routine, but we'll check the back. Everything looks fine. I'll check the sides. I'm checking more manually than I am with my eyes, but I'm looking at the same time to see if I feel anything. It's a nice Brazilian rosewood guitar. And sure enough, I see a wrinkle on the side of the guitar that when you press it, looks like it could have a little bit of movement. So out comes the naphtha. It could just be, there's a ton of figure in this this rosewood, and it's right kind of at the point right where this knot, I don't know if you can see that knot right here. Can you see that? This knot right here? Right where it leaves that knot. You're not going to see it in that light. But let me do the naphtha trick, where I flood it with naphtha, clean up the excess. The naphtha's gone. We look inside the guitar real quick. And there's no wet spot whatsoever. So whatever's going on there hasn't actually fully happened yet. So I might tell the customer, that's something you might want to keep your eyes on. Mike, are you there still? Ederoff?
Yeah.
You might want to keep an eye on that, because this is going to you guys.
Why is that?
He wants to sell it. So I said, you need to send it to Elderly.
Keep an eye on it.
So, then, we'll start. I'm not going to go through the whole process now. I've already actually given the exam to the guitar inside and out. It's very healthy. There's no brace issues, there's no bridge issues. But upon the examination, as I was looking over the guitar, I said, oh, what's going on up here? It's hard to see. You're not going to see it through Zoom, but there is a finish blemish and a crack in the finish up by the shoulder here. And the customer said, yeah, that happened when I this, that, and the other thing with a guitar strap. And, I dropped, it was something on the guitar. And he says, can you make that go away? And of course, whenever it comes to a finish problem, the first thing I'll tell a customer is that you already did make it go away. I have to put it back. So, but that's a perfect example there where I mentioned it to a customer because I noticed it during the examination. That saves me from having to have an awkward, if the customer didn't know it was there, of him getting his guitar back or examining it before it's ready to go to elderly and saying, hey, that wasn't there when I dropped off the guitar. Yes, it was. So he now knows about it. He's asked me to fix it. And by definition, I've made money by doing an examination on the guitar. Then I can feel the fret ends are a little bit sharp. So we've got some protruding fret ends. The other thing I will do on a guitar like this, where they want to set up, outside of looking at action, looking at relief and all of that stuff, I might hold the guitar this way to check the relief, which is the only way you should hold the guitar to check the relief. We've got a certain amount of relief in the neck. It's reasonable. It's not too much relief. It's not too little relief. But if I do have relief in the neck, here's the trick. I'm on a healthy guitar like this, whether it's in for just a setup or in for somebody who wants to sell it, I will go to check to see if the frets are rocking. If I have a tremendous amount of relief in the neck, it may or may not rock. I got a high fret there. And so right off the bat, I know I have high frets. I will typically loosen the strings so that the neck relaxes into being much more straight. I'll bring the pitch up a little bit, just to the point where the neck relaxes into being perfectly straight. So I'm touching the straight edge all the way up. This saves me from having to adjust the truss rod in order to get the neck straight. But now I have a really straight neck that I can't even get, a small feeler gauge through. So I know I've got a fairly straight neck. So when I examine the neck, the frets, we're good on the first couple of frets, and I've already looked at this guitar. So we've got rocking frets, kind of all the way up the fingerboard. And then as I'm looking at the frets, I'm also noticing that a lot of the frets are sticking up. So in this case, if I pull out my small 4/1000 or so feeler gauge, I want to see, and sure enough I can get under all of these fret ends. They're all grabbing onto the feeler gauge pretty easily. I can get under a lot of the center parts of the fret as well. So now we've got a discussion to take place with the customer. You've got frets that are coming up out of their slots. You've got a fingerboard that's shrunk. In this case, I already did the naphtha on the face of the guitar and there's no cracks there. But here it's like, okay, well, how do you want to handle this? At a minimum, your frets are rocking all over the place. So when we get the action down to where it wants to be, we're going to have to at least level the frets. But we have them all coming up out of their slots as well. Do you really want me to pay me to try to reseat all of these frets and then do a level and a crown and then do a setup? The better money, as far as I'm concerned, is spent refretting it at that point. I'll pull the frets, make sure the board's nice and true, put new frets in it, and set it up. That's the perfect example of not letting my customer do my diagnoses for me. A lot of times the customer will call you up and say, hey, my Santa Cruz just needs a good setup. The action's kind of high. I'd really like it playing better. So I'd like to drop it off for a setup. And then if we're going to casually have the attitude to saying, I want to limit my interaction with the customer at the front counter to no more than 10 minutes because I need to get back to my bench and make money. What's going to happen is you're going to do a setup on the guitar, bring the action way down. Customer's going to come in and say, why is it buzzing here? Why is it buzzing over there? Well, it turns out your frets are really kind of coming up at other slots. Well, how come you didn't pick that up when you dropped off the guitar? You already did a setup, and now you have to go back and refret the guitar. The customer may allow you to do that, but now you have to reset up the guitar. You actually spent time at the bench, burning at the bench, doing 2 setups when you're only getting paid for 1. So there's a case in point of where a full examination, this guitar gets the same examination that the Martin guitar did. The Martin guitar presented itself as a basket case. We're going to have to thoroughly go over this guitar with a fine-tooth comb to find everything that's wrong with it. This guitar didn't present itself as a basket case, because when you open that case, you're going to go, ooh, isn't that pretty? You know, it's a gorgeous guitar. Brazilian rosewood back and sides. It's got a gorgeous top on it. Great shader coat. And it sounds great and looks great. And, oh, you just need a setup? Okay, we'll just do a setup on it. And you stick it back in the case. That's a perfect example of where a thorough examination for every guitar that comes in the shop will earn you money, because you'll A, have noticed it, B, give the customer the opportunity to do it in certain small circumstances, like this finished chip that's up here. He wants me to fix it because he thinks that the guitar will sell better that way. So all around, it's a larger repair bill than just a setup. And if I'd let the customer dictate to me what needs to happen to the guitar, then, you know.
That's a really good point. I mean, it would be really easy to miss loose frets on a Santa Cruz, because I bet that's a very rare occurrence.
Well,
Any idea how those wound up coming out of there? Was it refretted at one point poorly?
He doesn't humidify his guitars as best as he should. I can see some wrinkling in the finish going on here, which is typical for any lacquer top guitar.
Yeah.
You know, but if there's movement, you know, if I look very carefully, I mean, the guitar has a tiny bit of that washboard look, you know, that we typically have grown accustomed to seeing on a lacquered spruce top guitar, where, you know, where the grain raises, and you're seeing the washboard effect of the winter grain. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm seeing some of that around the glue seam around the block, so that, you know, or around the sides of the block up on the upper shoulders.
Mhm.
That tells me that there's movement going on in the guitar that would precipitate, you know, some kind of work being done, you know, the sinking in the grain and stuff like that. That dried out fingerboard, it's ebony, so ebony, when it dries out, has a tendency to get, you know, a little bit more movement than rosewood, in my opinion. So, you know, seeing the fret ends come up, seeing the fret starting to lift out of the slots would be uncommon on a healthy Santa Cruz, but something that somebody hasn't been humidifying as best as they should probably wouldn't be surprising to me. But there's an example of what would have been a $200 setup turning into, you know, a refret. I will doing the finish touch up. I forget what I estimated that as. Yeah, it's not a big touch up. I estimated it 2 hours. We're going to be replacing the nut, saddle, and a setup. You know, so what would have been a setup is now that. You know, so you know, if I didn't do the examination, I would have been leaving. I would have been leaving $1,500 on the table. Plus, it wouldn't have played very well, and nobody would have wanted to buy it.
Yeah.
You know. So that
So
is that guitar. Go ahead.
we're coming up on 3 hours pretty hard. I think we should, there was one other thing that you wanted to do, correct?
Well, the last thing to do was then to take this
To
and
the
this
computer?
to the computer and generate a work order, which we can probably do in 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it fast.
All right, so let me, I'm going to turn off my microphone and we're going to wander into the office.
All
And
right.
I'll be coming on over there. I'm in the office. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I need to change my change the cameras.
You can need to change the cameras. You can see, by the way, in the Doug Tunet,
Yeah.
that's what our lives look like at the moment. So if you're
Shipping and receiving, man.
yes, the office
All ready for the road trip, Doug. All ready.
Okay, so I'm at the desk.
Can you show that picture again?
You want to put up the picture of
The one you
Let me
just
see
showed,
it.
all the clamps.
all the prop jacks?
Yeah.
Show it again. Pin that for him, Ian. Doug Tunet.
Oh my God.
And if
How
you
many did you make?
Desk here.
if you spin that around, this is what my desk looks like. That's Sharon's desk.
Your desk is like here.
How did
Jesus Christ.
did you have to order those boxes, or did you go down there and just
But we're
Like-
doing USPS priority mail, so the boxes are free. We just had to go to the post office to get them. There's like I think 400 boxes there. So
Good Lord. That's awesome.
what am I doing here? I'm sharing screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So here we are. Oh, Sharon, can you do me a favor and go grab those papers from the
Yes.
counter? I left the papers at the front counter, so I need to. So here's my QuickBooks. I've been using QuickBooks since 1986. I know virtually everything there is to know about QuickBooks. Not to throw shade on any of the programs that anybody on the planet is making for guitar stuff, in terms of shop flow control and invoicing and inventory management and all of that stuff. Inside of QuickBooks, you can do all of that. It takes time to get used to it and to know how it works. The operative part that we will be using here is creating an invoice. So I use invoice creation to do that. Everything in everything I need to do is centrally located from here. You can access other parts of it, customer lists, databases, everything else. If I bring up a customer list, I can go to my customer center, and every single customer I've had since 1986 is here. There's probably about a 12,000 member list there. The Every transaction is been saved since 1986. I can look up transactions by serial number. I can look up transactions by number. I can look up transactions by almost anything I need. Every service I do is also in the database that's within QuickBooks. As I come up with a new service, I can add it if the description doesn't exist for it being there. So, for example, if I'm doing guitar work and I'm doing, say, if I start doing appraisals, which I've always done, but say you haven't been, and somebody calls you and says, "I'd like to do appraisals on my guitars," and you can say, "Well, I guess I can do that." We'll physically examine the guitar and we'll do a little bit of market research and give you an idea of what your guitar is worth. I only do guitar repairs for insurance purposes, so we give them a range of what their guitar is worth so they can insure it properly. Or if we're doing a Bigsby installation. If you've never done a Bigsby installation before, and then somebody brings in a guitar that needs a Bigsby installation, and it's not already in my list, I could add it to the list. And that's exactly how every single item on this list of jobs, or this list of tasks, got in here. The first time I did a block inlay job on, for replacing inlays, it got entered the first time. Once it's entered, it's there forever. You never have to enter it again. So that's the master list. I also keep, by the way, our inventory of parts here. We scroll down further. This is all of the parts we did, do, once have, or currently stock in inventory, and the prices for all of those parts. And when they were entered, they're entered forever. When there's a price change, for example, if I'm going to D'Addario, here's all of the strings that we have carried in stock before. I only carry D'Addario strings just because I like the one-stop shopping aspect of it. I don't always carry all of these strings, because you can see here there's lots of zeros in this column, which tells me that I don't stock it as a current string, but I have gotten it for people in the past where I've ordered it, or I've stocked it and found out that it gets used so infrequently I don't keep it in inventory. Whereas other strings, like here, I'll keep EJ16s. We got 133 of them because we go through them like water. And we buy those in bulk, and we can, your inventory management is easy to access. I know exactly how much a set of D'Addario strings cost me on an average cost basis. I know what my general costs are. I know my average cost, and then I know what they sell for. And all of that is manipulatable and updatable every time there's a price change, which seems like every 4 months now with D'Addario. At least it feels that way with them. So we're going back to here. We're going to input this guitar for this customer. First, we're going to put in his name. He's a repeat customer. I have this Joey the guitar guy is a fictitious customer I made up, because if I want to test aspects of my invoicing or anything on QuickBooks, I can use this fictitious customer. I also have another customer called Walk-In. His first name is Christopher. Christopher Walk-In is a customer I use fairly often just for testing QuickBooks. So Joey, the guitar guy, is a repeat customer. So when I put him in there, all of his information here, and it's currently loading over here because I've got a slow computer, but his is going to be in here. So Joey, the guitar guy, lives in my nightmares. He lives in PETA, Pain in the Ass, New York. And that's his address. There are different classes we can use for repairs. Today's date, my invoice number, which was 36483, and that I mentioned last time we met is our way of also keeping tabs on our work orders. So this is the 36,483rd work order we've done since 2002, which is the year we incorporated it. So then we go to our repair number. This is 36483. It's today's date. If there's a due date, I'll put it in there. If most of the work we're doing today, we're not quoting due dates for, so I'll leave it blank. But if there is a due date that he needs it by, I'll put it in there. There's today's date, of course, you know, and then we can put in Joey, the guitar guy. This should have been preloaded there. But here we have a Martin D35 and its serial number. And we start with our first item. I charge a bench charge for each guitar we examine. If the customer leaves it with repair, as for repair, we return that bench charge to them. If they don't leave us the repair, we charge them the bench charge if they want the guitar back unrepaired. Next line item is we're going to put in a bridge Now everything that's in the item list that uses the word bridge will come up. In this case, bridge work is where we want to be. I use, when I type something in for this, we're going to re-glue this bridge. So I type the word re-glue. Everything else that's related to it comes up. This gets all filled in automatically. Remove and re-glue bridge with touch-up, and my price for it, which automatically loads. Then I have a side crack. And a side crack is in my list. I know it's in my list because I put it there before. Then we need pickguard replacement. So pickguard replacement, and we're going to go to pickguard replacement for a M style guitar, which is pickguard replacement M at the end of it. Remove all the glue guard, replace with self-adhesive with touch-up. We're also going to be putting finish probably underneath that pickguard, and we have our price for it. Fingerboard side crack. We have 2 of them, so I'm just going to put 2 over here. I might, for my own purposes, put it here too, so that I can see it in the description. Put the number 2 there, so I know there are 2 fingerboard side cracks. It adds them up and puts it over here. We have a neck reset. Reset neck, that's there. What's next? We have a refret. Refret. As we talked about before, I don't distinguish between binding and non-binding. I charge the same for every refret that comes in. Refret, we're going to be replacing the nut. Replacing the saddle. They all get filled in. Plate repair. Repair damaged bridge with wood disc inserts. We have loose braces. Brace repair. Now here I'm going to modify this for this particular invoice. I'm going to put the braces on the back because I'm listing them separately just for the customer's edification. I have 7 back segments, and I have on my drawing that I had made, I have them already highlighted, but if I want to make sure that they are on the work order and the resulting invoice, we would then mark them 1 treble, 2 treble, 2 bass, 3 treble, 3 bass, 4 treble, 4 bass. And here I can just put the number 7. It totals it for me. Then I can go to top braces, which I can add another line item for brace repair. And I can put back, or I can put the top. And I can make my list of upper X near pickguard rack. Number 1 finger brace treble. Number 1 finger brace bass. And I have my own codes that I stick in there just so I know I'll remember where it is. And then lower X, bass, and treble. And I have my diagram to see exactly where they are, but that's how I know I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 braces to deal with on that part. So that I can come over here. I hit number 5. And that's it. Then I'm going to be doing a restring, obviously. I don't charge for a restring, but that makes sure I know that I have the restring listed. That reminds me to put strings on it. He wants EJ16s, or if he might want EJ17s, what have you. We discount all our strings 20%. We are going to be putting in a bone nut. I just remember the codes, but they're all in here. All of my inventory is in here. So I have a bone nut blank. I have a bone saddle blank. I have my fret wire. I give him back. At this point, this is where I put BC, bench charge refund. I give them back their refund of the bench charge here. This is a handy item that I have in my inventory of services, only because I can, at the end of the year, if I charged everybody a bench charge, no matter how many I charged, or no matter how many are reimbursed, if I just pull up the number of bench charges that I've done, I know exactly how many guitars have passed my front counter throughout the course of a given year, because I just count the number of bench charges there are. Then we can subtotal it. Then there's the tax down here that's added by QuickBooks for me, and then the total. And I have a work order that I can now print, travel with the guitar through the shop. I can highlight things as they're done, which is what we do when they get to the book. I can mark it as pending so that it doesn't register in my accounting because it hasn't been paid yet. If I'm taking a deposit for it, I can add the deposit here. Then once it goes to be printed, this, can you see that? Did it show up?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So that is what it winds up looking like when I print it. It's pending for the shop purposes. When the job is complete, this pending goes away because we mark it as we mark the job as a final invoice. Now when I go to print, it will register it as an invoice. I don't have to repeat anything. It'll automatically convert it to the invoice. It adds it to my my accounts receivable. It adds it to the customer's record. It adds it everywhere I need it to be. It doesn't need nothing else. It needs to be added again. I just convert it to an invoice, and then I can go print the invoice, and this is what the invoice looks like for the customer. It's preloaded in QuickBooks. It's got our logo in it. Everything looks nice. It's got all of the information they would need. Here it gives us the total, and the tax is already listed up here. And then, you know, if there were payments already made on it, it would register down here that there are payments already made. We take money up front when we do repairs, so we, you know, we can fund our repairs. I don't believe in being my customer's bank. So we typically we'll take anywhere from 50 to 75% of the repair up front, because I figure 25% of the repair is still enough of an incentive for me to want to finish the guitar when it's done. I don't like taking 100% up front, because then, you know, that little devil that sits on your shoulder and says, you should do that one over there because you're getting paid more for that one. Or they haven't paid, you know, they have a balance too. You know, my 25% of any given repair bill will be enough of an incentive to have me have the guitar done for cash flow purposes. I don't believe in charging customers for their repairs only when they're done, because I'm not in the money lending business. And I don't believe if I was in the money lending business, I would be a terrible money lender, because I would be lending money at 0% interest. I don't believe in being my customer's bank. I believe in being my customer's guitar repair guy. And if I have a guitar in the shop an example like this, the guitar would be in the shop for several months. So I'm not in the business of loaning my customers their money to do their repair. I believe that the customer should cash flow the repair for me, because it's their guitar, and I'm not in the business of providing interest-free money so that they can float the guitar repair until it's done.
Cool.
So that's the end of the presentation for QuickBooks side of it.
All right.
Does anybody have any questions?
I think we need to start.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm looking at that price. I mean, is it worth for the customer to really repair that guitar if it's going to cost them close to $7,000 to do so?
It may not. And that's something that we discuss at the front counter very, very often when a guitar comes in that needs that much. The guitar may not get this far. The guitar may not get to having a work order generated at the front counter. Very often it does, you know, but that conversation takes place at the front counter where I tell a customer, oh, look, you know, and sometimes you know, that guitar, as soon as it came out of a case, I would be able to tell that that the repair was going to exceed the value of the guitar. It's a 1970 D35. I don't know what they're going for. My guess is
Probably, yeah, 3, 4, something like that.
You know, so this probably exceeds the value of the guitar by at least 20%, if not 30%. So at that time, you know, I would be telling the customer, well, look, you know, right as soon as it came out of the case, I would prepare them for the sticker shock of saying, hey, this is probably going to exceed the guitar's value. You get an idea from the customer then where their mindset is. Very often they'll say, you know what, my father gave me this guitar as a college or a high school graduation gift, and I can, you know, I'm so sad it's fallen into the state it is. He died last year. I can't think of living without this guitar. You know, it means so much to me, and he's no longer with us, so I can't, whatever the guitar needs, I'm willing to do it. I've heard that story. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. And at that point, I'm not people have often heard me say I'm not the patron saint of Silvertone. I'm also not the patron saint of any guitar company. I'm not in the business of telling people what they should do with their money. I'm in the business of fixing guitars. I'll advise them, hey, do you know you're spending more money on this guitar than it's worth? If you went to the open market, found a really good condition D35 from 1970, you would be spending less buying the new guitar that didn't need anything if it was in great shape, even whatever retailers call it, in terms of whatever grading system they have. But if it's in mint condition or mint plus or mint whatever the condition is, you're going to be spending probably about 20 or 30% less than this repair bill on buying a new guitar. And you'll have customers say, what, I'm not prepared to go over the value of the guitar. At that point, it saves you the time of even doing the evaluation. We're not going to necessarily go through the entire process of doing the evaluation if at the beginning of the conversation you tell a customer that this is going to be more than the guitar's worth. Yeah, if that's going to be the case, I'm just not going to get the guitar repaired. Oh, okay, fine. Here's your guitar back. Have a great weekend. I won't bother going through the course of doing the evaluation. The customer hands you the guitar back and says, yeah, but I'd really like to know everything it needs. Okay, well, you are aware that we charge $140 or $100 evaluation fee, at that point, because, if you really want me to go through the paces and evaluate this, it's going to cost you $100 for my time to do it.
It should be noted that Doug is in Westchester County, New York, like probably 3 or 4 towns over from where the Clintons call home.
Well, Westchester County is considered the most expensive county to live in the country, even more so than Beverly Hills.
So, like that's, unless they want to schlep their guitar to Connecticut or something like that, then that's the price of having a local repair person, because it's, all of the cost of that. Like if you're in some place in Alaska where people can only get to you by bush pilot, you may want to charge south of that a fair amount.
Yeah, I'm aware of the fact that we have a very expensive repair shop, probably more expensive than, if not most, I would almost dare to even say all. That's a pretty hefty repair bill. I charge the rates I do because of our, reputation and our ability to pull off repairs that in many cases others haven't. So I'm confident in our rate, I'm confident in our skills, and I'm confident in, what we're able to deliver. And our price is reflective of that. If they've got a customer that doesn't want to pay that, that's fine by me. I'm not necessarily interested in working with that customer then. That's just a matter of A, location, B, how long you've been doing this, what number you charge. It has more to do with tons of factors. There's, of course, what the market will bear, where you live, from where you work. There's how many years you've been doing this. If you're the young guy who's fresh out of Roberto Venn, or fresh out of Gallup, or fresh out of, what we used to affectionately call Red Wing, but fresh out of the guitar program, and you're your first couple of years working for yourself out of a basement or a second bedroom shop, and you want to get the benefit of lots and lots of experience under your belt, then you can become the low cost provider in your area. And a lot of those repairs that are being done price consciously will gravitate towards you, and you'll be doing lots of repairs for less than I charge or less than other people charge, and you'll get a lot of experience in the way, along the way, and that's a perfectly fine motivation for charging a lesser rate than your neighbors. I've never based our rate on how much somebody else is charged. I base my rate on how much my overhead is and how much it costs me to provide the service. We went through all of that stuff in the pricing discussion. Yes, but to answer that question, that guitar, depending on the customer, may not get fixed. I've done $6,000 to $10,000 repairs on lots of guitars that were worth a heck of a lot less than that, because a customer came to me with a story that, was, to them, that's worth it in their book. I'm not ever going to be in a position where I'm going to tell somebody how to spend their money.
By the way, if you have any question on whether or not you're ready to charge $7,000 to restore a D35, reach out and I'll help you figure that out. All right, should we I think we should wrap it up. I gotta talk to Jerry and then I'm sure my
Okay.
wife,
If there are no other questions, I'm good to wrap it up.
all right, everybody unmute and say thanks to Doug
And Dan,
and Dan.
did Dan
Thanks.
disappear by now?
Thank you.
That was a really good
Thank you,
one.
guys.
And Doug, I
Thank
think,
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
and
Thanks,
Doug,
guys.
like, I think we could do one on setting up that QuickBooks invoice because I get a feeling like how you've set up your invoicing system is probably not a trivial detail.
Well, it's evolved over time for sure. We can do that at some point. By
Yeah.
the way, just as an announcement, we are not gonna have a D&D show in December.